Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Hunt Collection Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris Godina, and we are recovering from a couple things this week. Today was the deadline for the Fleming Storage Units project, and I submitted my story. Mixed feelings on it. Basically, I had two things of feedback on my story. One was overall pretty positive. One was more on the negative side. I tried to fix some things and just kind of overall, I wish I had done better. I didn't get the chance to read a lot of the other submissions, but, I feel like, and this could just be, typical me talking, where I'm probably bottom of the barrel, but we'll see what happens. Overall, I think I would have regretted it more if I didn't give it a shot. But I wish I would have done better. But also, I don't know. I guess I'm not recovering. But I turned 30 on Wednesday, and I feel old, and I am full of existential anxiety. Yeah. I went out to dinner and all that. It was good, but I don't drink or anything, so there's nothing to recover from that. Aside from, I'm trying to lose a bunch of weight, and since, Thanksgiving week, I've been maintaining weight, but not really losing because I've been eating bad, and Wednesday was no different. I went to a place called the Duck Inn in Chicago, and I ate the duck, as it were, and it was very tasty, and it's rotisserie, and the way they do it is they put potatoes underneath them in the rotisserie, so all the drippings get on them, and it's delicious. But that's not what you're here for. What we're doing this episode is I went back to the Creepypasta Wiki, and I went and looked at their pasta of the months, and I decided to read one called 9/17/2010, and I'm not sure which month and year and all that this was pasta of the month, but I'm curious to see if it holds up to that standard of being one of the best ones submitted that month out of the many that were. So, without further ado, let's get into it. A couple of months ago, I began my classes at Chico State University. As I was preparing for my freshman year, I was able to find everything that I needed, except for a laptop. I'm not exactly very good at letting $1 go for something, especially when I could get that something for less. Okay, Chico State, that's in California, right? I don't know my universities very well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in California, somewhere. California's a big state. I'm not sure where it's at, but that's where I'm pretty sure it is. I scoured the internet for good deals on laptops. Finding none that suit my frugal habits, classes were only 2 weeks away, and I was becoming desperate for a computer. Several days later, I saw an ad in the newspaper for a laptop that was being sold for only $600, and not too far from where I live. It was a very nice Dell laptop too, seeming odd that it was being sold for almost $1,000 less than store price. Product placement much? I drove to the seller's address the following day. The house was farther out of the city, butting up to a dense forest. Outside of the house was an old Chevrolet, and a mess of old signs and other various vintage-looking items. I rang the doorbell, and a thin man in a flannel jacket came to the door. When I asked about the laptop, he looked almost relieved, and told me he was ready to sell it immediately. Lucky I came with cash in hand, and after proof of good condition, I went home with a new computer. Okay, what are we expecting here? Hopefully, we'll see. But, obviously, just off the top of my head, it's something I'm thinking of and getting, Barbie.avi vibes with the found computer, sort of. Obviously, this person is very eager to sell the laptop, so odds are something's wrong with it. I'm curious what it will be. Will it be something realistic, supernatural? Let's find out. Excited to have my first self-bought laptop, I powered it up and began uploading my own programs and applications onto it. Upon searching the hard drive, I found a folder hidden away on it, which was odd because the man selling it told me that the memory was wiped clean and ready for a fresh start. The folder was titled 9/17/2010, presumably a date. I opened the folder, revealing 6 videos and 3 pictures. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to watch the videos. Okay, this is definitely feeling like Barbie AVI. Let's see. The first video was simply titled 001. The video was shot from shaky camcorder inside of a vehicle, recording a woman walking out of a bar and getting into her car at night. After a couple of seconds, the woman drove off, and almost immediately, the person recording the video began to drive after her. The video ended after 24 seconds. It almost seemed like the cameraman had been waiting for the woman for a while. Definitely quick pace here. We're not messing around. There's not a lot of... we get the quick background of our narrator, who is, freshman in college and needs a new computer and didn't want to spend as much as he had to, so he, bought a secondhand one. So yeah, it's definitely a fast pace here. We're getting it, obviously this is already starting to get strange because we're seeing a video that looks, like a woman might be being followed by somebody and it's being recorded. So this might be a good thing that it's kind of jumping in and not giving us a lot of, pointless details. Just, here's my spooky thing. Which sometimes, especially with creepypasta, is, it's a good way to go. Is, here's my creepy idea. Is it good? Let's see. Come to think of it, I wasn't too alarmed by this at the time, just a little unsettled. I opened the next video file, titled 002. I assumed that this was the next part of the first video. My assumption was right, as it began with the camera on top of the console, facing out the windshield. It was raining now, leading me to believe that this was a short while after the first video ended. I could barely make out that the vehicle 2 cars ahead of this one was the same car that the woman in the bar left in. This went on for an unsettling 47 seconds before the camera cuts out. I began to get a little nervous, fearing that this might take a turn for the worst. Definitely self-aware. Our narrator knows the genre. Although, certainly, obviously it's a joke in real life. Any of us would probably be weirded out by, kind of inexplicable dash cam footage that appears like somebody's being followed. I'm curious if we'll find out that this car that our video camera is set in is the Chevrolet that was mentioned earlier. We'll see if the mention of the make of the car actually does come back. That's the only thing, though. Like, there's not too much for me to bite into yet. It's just sort of, hitting the beats. Okay, this happened next, this happened next, this happened next. So I'm just going to continue. Yeah, there's not too much to dig into. But, as if I was watching a television show, I wanted to see where this was headed. Not totally concerned yet, I decided to press on. The third video was, of course, titled 003. This was the one that got me officially concerned. I don't know, that's funny to me. That's probably just me, but just one like, okay, this one got me officially concerned. Just the way that's put, it's funny to me. I'm not really picking on it. Just one like, okay, now this one, I'm concerned now. Like, concerned, just feels like an underwhelming term. I think that's what it is. It's, this might be a problem, but what's concerning our narrator? The clip began from the same shaky hands as the first clip. It was now pouring rain outside of the car, and I could barely make out a figure in a fur coat with an umbrella walking to the front door of a house. I can only assume who this person was and whose house this belonged to. The figure entered the house and closed the door. The following stillness greatly unnerved me. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of rain dumping on top of the car. After roughly 2 minutes of this nerve-wracking nothingness, the light inside of the house cut out. Another minute or so went by before the camera was placed onto the console again, and the sound of a person exiting the car broke the stillness. After the car door quietly closed, another figure, this time hooded, could be seen walking towards the house. There's a comma miss there, and not to pick on the grammar too much, but yeah, I inserted a comma there where there should have been one. I think I choked on it for a second. I don't know if it'll come across, but anyways. I began to feel a knot tightening in the bottom of my stomach as the stranger walked around to the back of the house. Whoever this person was, they definitely weren't supposed to be there. After another couple seconds, the lights to the outside of the house cut out. It was pitch black, and only the rain alerted me that the camera was still rolling. The video ended after about 9 minutes of rain and darkness. Okay, if that was the last video, it's interesting that they didn't go for any gore or direct, then I heard screams or anything like that. It's just, you see a hooded person sneak around and presumably cut the power to the house, and then the video just runs and all you hear is rain and you don't see anything because it's dark out. It's an interesting way of going about it. It's a way that I find appealing depending on where it goes. Same thing, I feel like there's not too much to dig into yet. I just kind of want to see where it goes. So far, it's kind of cliche. It's the found footage sort of thing, the mysterious videos sort of thing. Like I've been comparing it to Barbie.avi, easy for me to say. And if you know that story, I'll probably cover it at some point. But again, I'm trying to do ones that I don't know a little bit more than the ones that I do. You'll see what I mean. Here's a few videos, and they're pretty much obviously something wrong in them. Even if you don't actually see something wrong happen, it's obvious, that something is strange. Which is a very strong route to take. This is a little more kind of straightforward. Okay, seems like somebody's following this woman. There isn't kind of a lot of that extra level of weird. In comparing it to Barbie.avi, I'm going to keep doing that, I guess. How it mentions, it looks like the woman keeps saying the word skin and talking about her skin. That's weird, and you don't know, you can't hear it, and it's kind of this other level of, it looked like there was a woman in distress. She keeps mentioning skin, which is just a strong detail, which is a thing that we're missing a little bit in here. We're not getting a lot of details or things to make us a little extra unsettling. It's just sort of, it's an unsettling image, certainly, if you saw this in real life, that where it looks like, someone had followed a woman home and seemingly went to break into her house or something. That would definitely be unsettling. It's just, it's mundane, I guess, is the word. It's very grounded. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just sort of, I'm just stream conscious here of, my thoughts on it. Which is usually, that's how I do this. I just sort of say things as I think of them. Let's continue this. I was now pretty sure that this was not an innocent little project or anything of that nature, and began to feel stupid for not checking this laptop seller's credibility. Was this person stalking the woman the same person that I met with earlier? Throughout the whole experience, I had a dormant thought in the back of my head to call the police, but I wasn't ready just yet. Reluctantly now, I began the fourth video. Oh, there's a fourth video. I must have missed that. I don't know. It was 3 in my head. Anyways, maybe this will break the whole restraint commentary I had before, because there's a whole other video. I began the fourth video, 004. It was dark again, but the rain had stopped, and I was left with only silence. Not long after the clip began, I could make out the sound of footsteps on gravel. getting louder as someone was approaching the vehicle. The car door opened and the dome of light was turned on, and I could tell that the camera was now on the floor of the car, pointing up towards the roof. I heard some fumbling in the background, and suddenly a thump sounded from the back of the truck. An arm abruptly obstructed the camera's view, and a large tarp could be seen pulled out from the car. I had only one scenario running through my head, and I hoped that it wasn't true. The person picked up the camera and put it back into the console, and began to back up. They drove for a good 3 minutes before parking in a branched-off road, and exiting the car to work on the load they were carrying. 6 minutes after the car was moved again to a different location, and the camera was picked up and carried underhanded away from the car. I could see now that it was the same shit-bucket truck that was in front of the seller's house. Hey, there it is. I was about ready to call the cops on this creep when the camera turned towards the house. It was a completely different house than the one I visited. I was a little relieved by this, though it didn't prove anything. And on the Creepypasta Wiki, there's a picture of the old Chevrolet truck that was taken earlier. By who? I don't know. It just says a picture of the truck taken earlier. Beats me. But maybe the author didn't include that. I don't know. As the fourth video came to an end, I was wondering whether or not I was prepared to see what came next. Oh, there's a fifth video. How did I miss that? I don't know why I had 3 in my head. I think there's another 6th one. Jeez. Did it say how many videos there were earlier and I just totally spaced on it and decided it was 3? I don't know. Oh, whatever. Let's keep going. Don't pay attention to me. Well, pay attention to me. Just, ignore my stupidity. I can only hope that this was a prank, or at least had a happy ending. 005 began inside the house. It was extremely dark, and the only thing I could make out was a figure that would occasionally walk in front of the camera. It was also quiet for the first few moments, minus the occasional barking of a dog outside. Eventually, a small sound started to appear. The small sound soon escalated to a loud, muffled scream. Shaking and struggling sounds became more apparent as time went on, as well as crying. Okay, this is what I was talking about in the third video where we didn't get this stuff, so now we're getting the off-camera screaming and shouting and all the scary noises. A light abruptly came on, and the camera was lifted and panned to the center of the room, revealing a beaten and bloody woman tied to a chair. Uh-oh. From what I could make out, this was, in fact, the woman from the bar. The camera zoomed in on her face for what seemed like an eternity before stopping. I couldn't believe that this was happening. The original hope that this was a movie or something like that had long since diminished. You think? With only one video remaining, I was beginning to fear for my own safety. I locked my door, closed my blinds, and pushed onward. It's kind of a fun detail where it's like he's freaking out because of this video, so he's gonna lock up the house and all that. And that makes sense. If you're someone that's like looking at something, you're watching something about true crime, and obviously this guy's really watching something about true crime, you get that paranoia, like, I need to lock all my doors and get a weapon and just, because obviously all the killers are coming for me. I feel like that's a very natural reaction. I'm kind of, I feel like this story's going to fall flat right now. It's prejudging, yes, but I'm curious what the twist is going to be. Because right now it's just sort of like, oh, I got it a laptop and there's a snuff film on it. And yeah, that kind of falls flat. It's very basic, but we don't know exactly if that's what it is yet. So before I get too much into that, like I said, I feel like I'm just kind of running through this, but that feels like what I need to do. The pace is really, boom, 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 boom. So I'm just gonna keep going, and we'll get into it. I began 006 with a small hope that this woman was still alive and that I could have her saved. The final installment of this horror show began in a bathroom setting. The camera was placed on the counter, facing a mirror, in which I could see a door. The only sound I could make was a familiar sound that destroyed my hopes. Power tools. Oh, Lord. I sat in front of the screen for what felt like hours before the sound stopped. More silence. Then, heavy footsteps, accompanied by what sounded like something being dragged. The doorknob turned, and the door was pushed open. Out of the darkness of the rest of the house appeared a middle-aged woman dressed in what I can only describe as lab attire, sporting a respirator and a pair of long rubber gloves. Okay. This, for some strange reason, gave me a small amount of relief. In the reflection, the woman struggled to drag something to the bathtub. As she hoisted it into the bathtub, I could see that it was a large, black garbage bag. I felt like I was dreaming. It was like I was watching a horror movie unfolding on the screen. She lifted the bag up from the tub, now empty, except for whatever entrails that still dropped out. She picked up the camera and placed it on the ground, facing the tub. On the floor in front of the bathtub was an assortment of corrosive substances and several other empty containers. The woman began to dump the liquids into the tub, which was followed by an awful, awful noise that I can only describe as pop rocks mixed with coke. The video ended, and I was left bewildered and panicked. I finally opened the pictures. The first was a picture of a truck. Oh, there's where we got the picture of the truck. The second was a picture of the girl, tied up, before she was beaten. And, they have that picture here in the story. I'm kind of afraid of where they got it. It's looks like a video of a still or a still of a video. And it's of a young woman bound and gagged, and it has like it looks like it's photoshopped. A timestamp of 2:24 a.m. and like the recording sign. I don't recognize where this is from. I'm afraid that it could be a real crime scene photo, which would be in poor taste. But I imagine there's a lot of images that aren't illegal of bound women online. So I'm hoping it's just one of those. Because otherwise, yeah, I hope this isn't from, a real crime scene photo or something like that, or real piece of evidence from a real case. Because that would be, that would be poor taste. And the third picture brought up a corrupted file notice, but maybe that's a good thing. I managed to keep the two pictures before I handed the laptop over to police. I was reimbursed by $600, along with a bonus. Apparently the victim was the young girlfriend of the older woman's ex-husband. The older woman was arrested almost a year before, but was freed of all charges due to a lack of evidence, and the ex-husband was incarcerated instead. I guess this was the missing link. I hope this has solved any unanswered questions, although I'm not sure who the man in the flannel jacket was, or how he got a hold of the laptop, or how he owns the same truck as the murderer. I guess I'll just leave that to the police. And this is credited to Bongwatersnowman. Okay. Where to start on this? Pasta of the Month seems like quite an honor. Frankly, I appreciate that they kind of tried to do, hey, here's this weird thing that happened, and that's it. And we didn't really go for, any torture or anything like that, which is a plus. We got a bit of a gore with the garbage bags and entrails spilling out and all that. And, we know who it was. It was this older woman, who was arrested but freed, and for some reason the ex-husband went to jail instead. I guess he took the fall for the crime. I don't know. Yes, we have the unanswered questions of who the guy was and why he had it. I think I appreciate, here's the, an untied thread. Here's the unanswered question of who was this guy. Although it feels more like, who was this guy? Like, why? Like, what did that have to do with anything? Like, if there's not like a sort of, it's one of those questions like, yeah, why? But it doesn't seem to matter because we have the proof of who murdered the girl. It was it was the woman, and the guy is in jail. So it's like, okay, yeah, how did this guy get this stuff? And that feels like it feels more like this is trying to kind of cop out explaining why this laptop was there and available. And obviously this guy was trying to get rid of it, so presumably he knew what was on it, or he knew what was on it at least, and he thought it was gone. So it could be like, oh, this guy knew this person was trying to, cover up tracks or something. But it's sort of it tries to give you that, like, well, who was this man? Ooh, and it's just sort of like, it feels like you needed this guy to exist solely for a way for the narrator to get the laptop instead of playing like an actual part. Yeah, and that feels like a cop-out to me. Maybe a little harsh, but yeah, that's just kind of how it feels like. I don't remember if I finished my thought before, but I was saying I appreciate how it's just sort of like, here's my creepy experience, that's it. There's no, oh, now the killer's coming for me, or now, here's all this stuff, and, I was scarred, and I don't know what to do, and this and that. It's just like, yeah, I saw, a snuff film, basically, and I turned over to the police. I appreciate that. I appreciate, like, the attempted at realism, and all that. It just, I said the pacing was very, okay, here, just the facts. Here's, this is what happened, this is what this happened, this is what happened. And I appreciate that too. It's just, very kind of matter of fact, and that works on its own, but overall the events, the facts were just kind of boring. It's very, like I said, I think it was trying to be down to earth, but it was a little too down to earth. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like, okay, I have this idea. I found a, video of somebody being murdered on a laptop that I bought. And, like, it was basically just taking that idea and putting a bunch of words around it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. And it didn't really branch out and do like that extra mile of strange to make you really go, ooh, that was weird. Let's take a look at some of the comments, because there are a lot of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but here's one from somebody named Jason McGarvey. The conclusion of the story just makes the entire pointless, I guess I'll just leave that to the police. It's such a lazy ending, and an insult to the reader who sat through this and was rewarded with that utter bullocks you call an ending. Also, why even mention or describe the man in the flannel jacket at all, if he has no relevance and you're just going to sweep any connection he has to the story under the rug at the end anyway? The story's not scary at any point. The only praise I can give is that it didn't have many spelling mistakes. Inclusion, a possibly interesting premise for a story, is wasted because of lazy and lackluster writing, while the ending leaves you with more questions than answers. I feel like I mostly agree with Jason here. I don't think I'll just give it to the police is a bad ending. I feel like that's like something that you would do. But yeah, like I was saying, I kind of agree that the man in the flannel jacket was literally just, somebody has to give our narrator the laptop, so it's just going to have to be this guy. And I'll just try and be like, ooh, isn't it spooky why this guy had the laptop? And you don't really get any hint of what they could be. I mean, he also had the car, right? Or at least, a similar car. And sort of, loose ends can be good, but it just felt like it was, there was red herring almost. Like, it was just kind of like, ooh, well, he has the car. Like, but it seems like everybody's accounted for. There was the woman on the tape and her ex-husband. So yeah, who is this guy? It's not like we have a hint of who this guy is. So it just doesn't really make sense. Like I said, it feels like a cop-out. Let's take a look with some other comments. There's a lot of praise for it. 200 out of 10, says Lunar Explosion. Okie dokie. Here's a long one. Let's see. what this one says. This is from RGAHS Freak. So RG, American Horror Story Freak. They say 10 out of 10. LOVED, it. I love the ending and everything. I just want to talk about something for a second. I read a lot of the comments. A handful of people are complaining about the slashes in the files, the ending, and the lack of gore. The slashes in the files. Oh, is it talking about like the title? Like, oh, you shouldn't be able to use those characters in a file, presumably. I can't remember offhand. But that's actually kind of a good point. That does kind of, it's a small detail, but it does affect the reality if that's what it is. You can't create a file that has slashes in it. It's an improper character. Yeah, that's an easy to miss mistake for both the reader and the writer. But it's if someone does notice it, it's costly because like apparently people did notice it. And it's like, well, obviously this couldn't exist, and this couldn't happen, which is a problem for your realist horror story. If someone says, well, obviously this just couldn't happen. Anyway, they say 1, it's a fake story, so anything is possible. True, but not when you're going for realism, which it seemed like this person was. Personally, I liked its touch with the slashes. Yet Jeff has magically come back to life with no explanations or reason. Wait, what is this talking about? And his OP, along with a bunch of other immortal gorefest killers in the creepypasta world. That are so Wait. Was this talking about Jeff the Killer? There's nothing... Did someone comment on the wrong thing? It's a fake story, so anything's possible. Personally, I liked its touch with the slashers. Yet Jeff has magically come back to life with no explanations. Or is it using Jeff the Killer as an example of him coming back to life and a reason, and his OP overpowered, along with a bunch of other immortal gorefest killers in the creepypasta world that are so strong they are just unbeatable, which makes the story flat out boring. Accurate. And no one complains about that being unrealistic. Oh, yes, they do. You are in the wrong circles, friend. If I will complain to you about Jeff the Killer up and down, and a lot of his old, his other like Jacks and Clockworks and stuff. And horror stories are meant to have things happen that wouldn't belong. That's the point. Accurate. So the slashes were fine to me. I like them. So wait, is it talking about like where there were slashes in the file? Oh, so the title, of course, the 9/10/2017. But yeah, okay, I appreciate, I get that this person is saying, well, that's not a big deal because like crazy things happen in creepypasta, but when you're going for realism, you can't have something that like that's like so simple that just couldn't happen. You can't have that because it's a glare. Like I said, it's easy to miss, but if you notice it, it's glaring. Anyways, this person continues. 2. Even though the story is fake, she was shooting for some realism, which is why they chose the ending they did. How many creepypasta movies have you seen where the main character goes on manhunts for the antagonist? Way too many to count. I love the ending of this story because it was real. The character was scared, and in reality, after seeing the scary shit on the laptop, of course, they didn't want to go get mixed up in this. She let the police do their job. If that man sold the computer, really was the killer, they're obviously smart enough not to just go to their house and go toe-to-toe with them. They might end up with the same fate as that girl. So another smart move would be to give the police a tip about this guy. So yeah, the ending was 100% perfect in my opinion. I'm not going to go with 100% perfect, but yeah, I agree that just saying, okay, let the police handle it is a good ending for a realistic type thing. It makes logical sense. And 3, people complain about the gore. Well, the lack of it. Again, the story was just fine without it. True. Everyone these days always wants to see gore fests and jump scares. True. In case you new horror fans don't know, gore fests aren't true horrors or creepypastas. I'm a creepypasta writer and horror fan, so I know what I'm talking about. Okay, that's funny. The point of a creepypasta or any type of horror is to scare you, make the air around you dead cold, and make you paranoid of your surroundings. That's exactly what the stories focus on. And for that, I congratulate the author. When I write a story, my goal is to scare. Some of mine don't even have murder. But when they do, it does get very dark and detailed. However, that doesn't mean the whole story is just some invincible idiot with a knife splattering people's blood and guts everywhere. Not at all. I take the time to think of a real good, scary, and suspenseful storyline. Sometimes a horror story is much better without murder and gore. True. And just added more paranoia, because in horror it's all about giving you that rush, that chill that you feel right up your spine. So again, the author did a great job at that. So yeah, all in all, this story was amazing. 10 out of 10. The author did a great job. I feel like this person, what was it? Oh yeah, American Horror Story Freak, RG American Horror Story Freak. Yeah, I agree with a lot of their points, except for the one where they think this story was great. And some of their points, like, obviously they're very excited, but yeah, lacking gore is fine. That's good. You don't always need that. You could have gore. Gore isn't inherently bad, but people rely on it too much. The shock factor. If you're just throwing buckets of blood everywhere, it tends to become more like ridiculous and goofy than scary. It's like, I don't know, like, if I personally could write a good gore scene necessarily, because it's tough, because it's easy to screw it up. Yeah, that was a long comment, so I'm not really going to read more. Obviously, this was a overall pretty popular story if it made Pasta of the Month. Yeah, I don't see it. I think it has very strong aspects. And true, compared to a lot of other creepypastas, especially, like, as that person said, like the icon gore fests, like with Jeff the Killer and all that. This had the right idea. This had a good idea, I should say. It tried to ground itself. It went for, a strong realism. It knew what it wanted, and it went for it. I think it may have weighed itself down to earth a little too much. Yes, less is more, but I feel like this was just a little too on the realistic side. And like I said, the guy seemingly having no connection, but kind of just being there to be like, ooh, he had the laptop and he had the same truck. Like, who could he be? Yeah, I guess, like, okay, it's getting left to the police, and, maybe he's, with the woman or something. Maybe he actually was a part of it. But there's no inkling of that, and, it, like I said, it feels like a cop-out. So, yeah, I'm kind of glad I read that one, because it's a good example of something that's really strong, and with refinement, and maybe from criticism from somebody, maybe not even somebody like me, probably someone who's better than me, but some real constructive criticism, the story could have been great, and I was comparing it to Barbie Died AVI, but, just because that's, like, a strong example of, like, the found video type story doesn't mean that, that has to be the only one. So, yeah, I wish this story maybe had a few more eyes on it or something. Maybe the author, Bongwatersnowman, maybe had some other people looking at it for him. But, I think it's a solid effort. Like I said, it's not bad. It just falls a little flat, and it has a little, rough details. It's definitely not the worst thing we've read. And, yeah, I think that'll about wrap it up. Oh, wow, I know there were some breaks here and there, but I've been talking for almost 40 minutes, it seems like. I didn't even realize. Yeah, so yeah, let's definitely wrap this up. So I will see you next week. Thanks for listening, share all that good stuff. Let's get some more ears on here. And I will see you next week. Later.